Make you feel then when the president's own spokesman said that you might lose the majority?
I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about what the president's employees say about one thing or another.
But it directly impacts.
They must realize that. But you know what? I'm the Speaker of the House.
Mm-hmm. Speaker of the House saying a little something about a president employee. I wonder who that was about.
And Robert, if you're watching, you're more than just an employee to us. Top Line begins now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Washington Post Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Jonathan Karl.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest news and analysis on politics, everything you need to know, and it's twitter.com/Rick Klein, twitter.com/John Karl for my compatriot here. Sir, start us off.
Start off with Promise Keeper. The president is saying that he has kept his promise on Iraq. By the end of the month, there will be fewer than 50,000 U.S. troops in Iraq. The combat mission will be over, keeping, for the most part, the promise he made during the campaign. But, Rick, interesting thing on this. The Iraqis almost rained on this parade. They're going to spend the month talking about keeping this promise. But the Iraqi government put out its annual or its monthly toll of how many civilians have been killed in the month of July, and they said it was the deadliest month since 2008. In a very interesting move here, the administration for the first time actually said that was wrong. They corrected the Iraqis. They said that, in fact, there were only 222 people, not 535, killed in Iraq in the month of July. I don't know what happened to the extra 300 people.
In either event, not a lot to celebrate. You also have the inconvenient fact that there isn't an Iraqi government at the present moment. But no, clearly this is something, particularly with the Afghanistan news getting worse, that the Obama White House is going to be out. Month of August is going to be Iraq month for most intents and purposes. Next up, ethics woes. There's another one. This time is Congresswoman Maxine Waters, a Democrat of California, who has ethics charges outlined against her. Add that to Charlie Rangel, and you have two veteran Democrats, both members of the Congressional Black Caucus, who are under fire and facing trials, public trials on ethics charges this fall. A nightmare scenario for Democrats in both cases, and it raises racial politics. Whenever you talk about CBCers, two of them at the same time, it puts everyone in a tough position.
Well, what's frustrating to the Democratic leadership here is that both of these things could actually go away if Waters and Rangel would accept an admonishment of some kind, have some kind of a settlement. You wouldn't have to have these trials, but now it looks like you could actually have two trials in the fall, just as they're going into the campaign. Next up, money gap. We spent a lot of time here on Top Line talking about Democratic problems looking up to the House races this fall. But this is an interesting story by our friend Chris Cillizza over at the Washington Post. Took a look at the 30 races ranked toss-up by Charlie Cook, and sure enough, Democrats have a money advantage in 23 of the 30 races, and some of the cases it's a really big money advantage.
And this is going to be a big issue for Republicans. There are a lot of places where they're going to leave seats on the table because they weren't able to compete financially at the committee level as well as the individual race level. And finally today, cojones. That's as in what Sarah Palin says President Obama doesn't have. In an entertaining Fox News Sunday appearance, Sarah Palin ran the gamut, wrote on her hand. We'll show you a little bit of that interview later on. You know, this is the White House just gets annoyed to have to respond to anything that she says, but she's out there and she makes news.
Rick, when are you going to get sick of talking about Sarah Palin?
Never. She get the 4 spot on our top lines, just like the Lou Gehrig spot, the honorary one. We're joined today by two very special guests, kind of dueling gurus segment that we want to bring you here on Top Line. Tom Davis, the former chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, and Martin Frost, the former chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and both former congressmen. Gentlemen, thank you. And I want to start with you, Mr. Frost, because you saw Speaker Pelosi yesterday say she's not nervous about Democratic prospects. Does she speak for the caucus there? Should she be nervous?
Well, she's the leader of the caucus as Speaker, and of course she has to put as positive a spin on this as she can. Look, the House is in play. Everybody knows that. I think that the Democrats have a reasonable chance of holding the House, although it could be pretty close. But of course that's going to be her position.
Reasonable chance?
I think she has a chance. I think at this point, everything that has changed over the last 6 months favors the Republicans. And a couple other things. You talk about the Black Caucus and the ethics trials coming up, talk about Afghanistan. These are things that could hurt the Democrats with their base. They're already losing independents. Republicans are united and angry, and if you will say, much more eager to vote than Democrats on the enthusiasm gap. They have the potential of their base falling apart between now and November.
But Democrats are doing something that they didn't do in 1994 when we lost the House, and that's have candidates who are prepared and understand they have real races, and that's why the money does make a difference. I went to a meeting at the DCCC a year ago where we talked about what do they need to do to get ready for this election, and one of the the points that I made was make sure your candidates are well funded.
But still you see the map continuing to expand, and it's only expanding really into Democratic territory. We see this time and time again. And interesting on this, a lot of the places where Democrats need the most help, they're not going to be able to turn to President Obama for help. Do you agree with that? There's places where
there's no question of that.
Yeah.
You're not going to see him in the South, and you won't see him in some of the Midwestern districts. But don't forget, there are a few Republican seats on the table, too. Hawaii, Louisiana, perhaps Delaware, perhaps a seat in Illinois. So the Republicans might lose a few seats. If they do, then that raises the bar in terms of how many seats they have to take.
How big a deal are these ethics cases going to be? I mean, if these things actually go to trial? Because on one hand, I mean, you know, these cases are not, this is not the Foley scandal. This is not, you know, House pages.
In some ways, it's worse than the Foley scandal when you think about it. You have the chairman of the tax writing committee not paying taxes and the like, but it just adds the narrative that you need to change Congress. Look, this election is not about Republicans versus Democrats. The voters have fired the Republicans the last two opportunities they had to in 2006 and 2008. This is about, do we want to put a check on President Obama or do we want to give him a blank check? And when you put it in those terms, this is what the voters faced in 1994 where the Democrats controlled everything. In 2006, when the Republicans controlled everything, they changed houses both times. I think that's what we're heading for.
It doesn't have to be that way, though. And the Democrats are going to try and make this a choice between two candidates, their candidate and the Republican candidate. The Republicans will try and make this choice just a referendum on Democrats. And that's what this election is going to all be about. And we'll see. I know what I did in '94. I had a very tough race. I survived. I actually did a voter scorecard in which my opponent had never run for office. I took his public positions, and I published those as a vote scorecard to show how he would have voted had he been in Congress. Democrats are going to have to do that, do it aggressively. They've got to make it a choice between two people.
Okay, choice versus referendum. We've heard that time and time again from Democrats. But is it possible? I mean, we heard Republicans say the exact same thing in 2006, and they weren't able to make it into a choice. It ended up being a referendum on Republicans.
Well, nationally, it's going to be a referendum. But as Martin alluded to, in individual races, you can make it a choice. A wide-awake Democrat is going to make this a choice. Harry Reid in Nevada, he's demonizing his opponent and trying to make this a choice. So
he's helping, too.
In a lot of these races, the Republican candidates are a little bit green. They're going to go off message. And if you can demonize your opponent, you can overcome the wave that's coming through. And that's what they'll try to do. You can't do it, though, in 70 races. You can do it in a handful of races.
And the question is what effect the Tea Party candidates have. First of all, there will be some third-party Tea Party candidates in some of these races take votes away from Republicans. Also, some of the people that the Tea Party has managed to get nominated as Republicans are not strong candidates. This is going to be one of the most interesting elections anybody has ever seen.
Okay, now you say the Democrats have a reasonable chance of keeping the House.
I believe we do.
Okay, let's take the reverse of that. So you're saying that there's an equally reasonable chance.
I didn't say equally, but I think the Republicans have a shot at taking this back, and nobody should deny that. I understand why Pelosi took issue when the press spokesman for the president said that. She didn't want him to say that, but the House is in play. Everybody understands that.
You know, Pelosi ought to be saying they're going to repeal Social Security, they're going to do these things, say the House is in play.
This is what the bad guys are going to do.
And that's how you rally your base.
Yeah.
So there are two ways to play.
You agree with that? I mean, are they putting too much of a positive spin on this?
No, I mean, she has to rally her own troops. You don't want your own people to be dispirited going into the election. But Tom's right. She has to say, these are the terrible things that are going to happen if you have the Republicans back in charge, and here they are.
I want to put you guys on the spot on two different items. First of all, you guys know the maps better than anyone. First, you, Mr. Davis, where are we not looking? Give us a race or two races that are not on anyone's map, kind of a sleeper for this year.
Well, I mean, the polling is so good now. It's hard to find.
But as you know, in big wave elections, you see races
Washington
come into play.
State, you know, Wisconsin. All of a sudden, these races are in play, and people, particularly without a record, can come up and surprise you. I will tell you this: you're going to see candidates who don't have the cash be able to dump money on their opponents, and you'll see some races emerge.
I'll tell you where you should look. And for those of you who are football fans, this race is going to be determined in the Big Ten, the ACC, and the SEC. It's going to be determined in the Midwest and the South and Southeast. That's where most of the races are at play. There may be some outliers, as Tom has suggested, out in the Rocky Mountain states or out in the far west, but this is going to happen right in the middle of the country and in the southeast part of the country.
Go ahead. I would just say, in some of these states where you have a Republican candidate running way ahead, watch for some coattails. Look at Arkansas governor race right now. Nobody's not even on the map, but the Senate race is going to be so big the turnout differential so huge, you get a lot of straight ticket.
Okay, we're just about out of time. We got to put you on the spot with a number. I need a number for the House, a number for the Senate. Republican pickup.
Well, let me just start. It's way too early. This has a long time.
Caveats out of the way. Give us a number.
If I had to put my life on it right now, I'd say 50.
50.
And Senate?
8.
My over-under is 30 in the House, although it could get more, and 5 or 6 in the Senate, I believe.
All right, that's close enough to clarity.
We'll come back. We'll give you a chance to revise and extend those predictions.
We need to do that.
All right, Tom Davis, Martin Frost, appreciate you being here. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.